This is episode 73 of the Sports Business Classroom audio experience with Joel Meyers. Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom audio experience. My name is Marlena Rodriguez, and I am an alum of the Sports Business Classroom immersive program from 2021, where I took part in the media and broadcast major. For the next several weeks, I will be hosting an alumni takeover series where I highlight some of the people I look up to in my profession. I'm super excited to be reunited with the SBC team again, and I can't wait to share with you all the amazing content we have prepared. Hey everyone, welcome back to the SBC podcast. I'm your host Marlena, and today is very exciting with this episode. We have a future Hall of Famer. I'm just gonna put it out there. He's in his 11th season with the New Orleans Pelicans. And, they're doing a great job this season. And, who knows? Sky's the limit. We're going to see what they do in the playoffs. But going back, he's a 2-time Emmy Award winner with the Los Angeles Lakers. He's been with the San Antonio Spurs. This man has been everywhere. So we're so excited to have him on the podcast. Joel Meyers, everybody. Joel, thank you for joining us.
Oh, Marlena, my pleasure. And good to be with you. And it must mean I'm really old by the way you introduced me.
No, wise. We never do. It's all wisdom. It's all wisdom. Yes.
Okay.
You're in Utah, yes?
In very snowy Salt Lake City, where we've been for 3 days now. Well, actually 4. We came in on Monday, and it has not stopped snowing. So if you like to ski, this is the place to be because Park City is not far away. I would prefer being on the beach. I'm not a skier, maybe years ago, but I prefer the ocean, the Gulf, the beach.
That was my next question. I was like, are you a skier or snowboarder? But, the tropics are very nice, so I don't blame you. We're going to jump right into it, but for anyone who does not know about Joel Meyers, okay, tell us a bit about yourself, how you grew up, like were you always attracted to sports? Is that kind of how you fell in love with this?
Always had an idea of what I wanted to do. And I grew up, Marlena, in St. Louis. So growing up in St. Louis, I got to listen to Harry Carey and Jack Buck call the Cardinal games. And then we had the St. Louis Hawks and my favorite player, Bob Pettit. And I was just a puppy when he retired in 1965. We had Jerry Gross as the play-by-play announcer, and then Skip Carey, 2 really good basketball announcers. So I was spoiled. I lived in a kind of a mid-major market. And St. Louis has gone a little bit smaller, but at the time it was much larger. But the broadcast talent was amazing. So I grew up with a clock radio in my bedroom, picked up all kinds of stations all over the country. BZ in Boston, CAU in Philadelphia, KDKA with Bob Prince calling the Pirates games in Pittsburgh, Ernie Hardwell on WJR in Detroit. So I was spoiled. And I listened to a lot of great broadcasters growing up.
Wow, that's amazing. Like you said, you're spoiled, but the talent that you got to experience, what are some key factors that you kind of pulled from those people that you listened to?
Well, I loved the fact that all the guys I mentioned were themselves. They didn't try to be anybody else because I got to meet them all, basically. Not Bob Prince at KDK in Pittsburgh. And some of the guys, although I met Harry Callis, and Richie Ashburn, who did the Phillies on radio and TV. So I got to meet these people. And when I met them, it was exactly the way I thought they'd be, as natural in person as they sounded on the air, especially Ernie Harwell, who was a Hall of Famer for the Detroit Tigers. And so I grew up knowing, just be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't emulate anybody else. You can always get little tips on technique and style, but always be yourself. That's the key.
I feel like people reiterate that for so many future up and coming broadcasters, like people listening to this podcast right now. There's so many that probably look up to you and so many others. Doris Burke, Mark Jones, the list goes on. There's so much talent and amazing people within the league right now. So just hearing those words, I'm sure people take that into account. And also another thing I've heard was reps, right? You have to get your reps in. You kind of got to just perfect your craft.
Well, I did high school games, WIBP in Belleville, right across the river from St. Louis, and drove through ice storms. Matt Toon, Collinsville wasn't far, Belleville right across the river, and did high school games, all kinds of high school games. So it was a great experience. And I'd listen to the jazz station on the way home. And if you don't get reps, if you skip every step of the process, I don't know if you can really appreciate everything. So the reps are important. And whatever you do, I was on radio at the University of Missouri. I was a disc jockey there. I ran out of stations there, went through 3 stations there. So before I moved to Detroit right out of college, and then listened to everybody I could, took a tape player with me to Cobo. They were playing at Cobo Hall, the old convention center in downtown Detroit at the time, and went to Cobo and took a cassette player. And I was fortunate because the PR director of the Pistons gave me a press pass, and I just did play-by-play nonstop. And then I'd listen to it on the way home. And what I liked stayed. What I hated, I cringed. So reps are very important.
Yeah, I think everyone talks about whether there's their first time being in front of the camera or maybe creating a YouTube series going on YouTube. It's always that first episode that you kind of cringe and look back and see how far you've come.
Yeah, and you always want to look at your work and keep up with your work. And to this day, I try to track what we're doing, and am I a good enough listener to my partner, Antonio Daniels, because we have a great relationship. And I think that's one of the keys in broadcasting is being a good listener. And I was not a very good listener when I started my career. And that's the one thing that I think all young broadcasters need to do more of. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Listen to your partner, because you may feed off of that. And not only, but you may use it later in the telecast or radio broadcast as well. So listening's the key.
So you talked about jazz. We're going to get into all that. I know you're, big on wine and horses a bit. So we're going to dive into that a little bit later because I'm so excited to talk to you about that because I love wine also. So I can't wait to get your recommendations. But for, like I said, there's a lot of students listen to this podcast, kind of people who want advice and are looking up to, a whole bunch of information that there is out in the internet and like social media. But if you were to teach a course, okay, it was, broadcasting 101, going back to college, what would be like the top 3 things you would focus on if you were to teach a course about broadcasting?
Well, communication skills more than anything else. Don't talk at, but with, so that you're conversing with your audience. You need to be, we do play by play. So it's point A to B to C to D, and maybe the finish. And play by play is a great way to start, but be conversational. Don't be to the point where all you're doing is a rat-a-tat-tat, and you're almost locked into listening to yourself too much, because we all want a good cadence, especially on radio, so that you build. And so communication skills are really important in that it's a conversation. You're connecting with your audience, and you're one of them. You've linked to them, and they feel like you're a friend more than anything else. So that would be a priority to me. But as I said, probably number 2 is being a really good listener and not jumping to conclusions before anybody finishes their thought. But being a listener, also being a great communicator, so that you don't talk to, but talk with. Don't talk down like you're above your audience. And the third thing, just be a sponge more than anything else. And be a sponge with everybody that you work with, because you can pick up on so many different things. So many other people have opinions, and a lot of them are very valid. So that goes back to listening, but try to do that as much as possible.
Wow, that's everyone listening or watching this podcast. I hope you took down notes right there from Professor Joel Meyers. Thank you for that.
No, I would not be a teacher. I promise you that I failed most courses, so I would not be a teacher. Pass fail was not there, unfortunately, for me.
Yeah, there's never failures, right? It's only lessons.
Right. I'm glad you said it.
Yeah. Someone had to. I got you. Don't worry. So you're in the league, right? You're 2-time Emmy winner. You have all these accolades. What goes on behind the scenes to get to that point? Like throughout your career, what have you done? What's the day in the life like for people who don't know, who are not in your shoes yet, but wish to be soon?
Well, I didn't talk about preparation, and I'm kind of a stickler to this day for that. So I'm not a huge numbers guy. I have them in front of me, whether it's offensive, defensive efficiency, whether it's football and you're going over other things. Too often, stats are skewed. And to look at a box at the end of a game, like in the NBA, it doesn't tell the complete story. It tells some of the story, but not the complete story. So, preparation, I like to personalize players, whether it's at the free throw line, whether it's my director's sitting on a shot of a player. And I like to let people know maybe where he's from, how he got to where he's at now. How old is he? Because a lot of these guys, it seems like our whole team, besides CJ and Jonas and Larry Nance Jr., are between 19 and 25. So not a lot of people know their background history, how they got to this position. So preparation is really important for me. And then when you're around your franchise, your team, more than anything else, let them know how much you care. Either you're all in or get the hell out. And I think that's a real key. I've always been really fortunate that I have been staff with teams. I've worked with teams. I haven't worked for broadcast entities. I did a long time ago, but once I got into the NBA, fortunately, and also let them know how much you care, because whether it's baseball, whether it's football, basketball, it doesn't make any difference. It could be lacrosse, could be anything, soccer, hockey. If you don't love what you do, you shouldn't be doing it. And that comes across as well. So I love basketball. It's always been, I grew up in St. Louis and I loved baseball growing up as a kid, but basketball, it hooked me early. And it was the only sport I actually played a little bit. So I played baseball too. Was never big enough, thank God, to play football. I would have been killed. But it comes across on the air if you care and you really love what you do. And I think that's in any walk of life, in anything you do. If you really care and you love what you do, it's going to come across to whoever you're dealing with. So I really care. I prep a lot. I do a lot of homework. And I'm in my room in Salt Lake City now, getting ready for a game tonight. We had them on Tuesday, but I'm trying to come up with other ideas and other stories. So when you say, go into the background, that's what I do. And then I let people know, like a Zion Williamson, who's only 22 years old. He is just a great young guy, just a wonderful young gentleman. And he cares about his teammates. He's bonding with the locker room now because he couldn't be on the floor before. And then we've got guys like, I go down the list, Trey Murphy and Jose Alvarado and Najee Marshall and all these young guys, Dyson Daniels, Kyra Lewis. They're young. I mean, super young. And they're into it. So I was at shoot around for over an hour this morning. I jump on the bus whenever I can. I go to practice. Just let them know. And then you paid it forward. It'll come right back to you.
Well said. Like you said, just showing up and them seeing you, taking the time, because, you could be doing other things, getting ready, but seeing them and showing them that you're there, that matters.
Yeah. We have a great group of young guys. David Griffin is doing a real good job. After the loss on Tuesday night, we had a team dinner, and we're included. And we're with the guys after a loss, and it's a bonding. It's everybody, even after it's a long march, a long season, after the disappointment that you just went through for 2.5 hours. Now it's kind of like decompress, back to normal, to another game coming up in a couple of days or even the next night. So, we're with them, and they know that. If you're with them every step of the way, they really know it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it helps calling games too, because you're so authentic and you know the person behind the number, right?
It's a trust factor. It's a trust factor in anything you do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, moving forward, I want to talk about currently what's going on now. How do you feel your Pelicans are 18-9 right now? Is that a great feeling?
Yeah, well, after what's happened over they've been to the playoffs only a couple of times over the last 9-10 years. So it's a great feeling, but at the same time, here's the best part of it all. The window is just opening for this group. CJ re-upped. CJ's got another year left next year. He's got 2 years added. President of the Players Association, a bright, articulate guy, CJ McCollum, and leadership in the locker room. His communication skills are incredible with these young men. So by example, and then he also talks to them nonstop. So I'm happy, but at the same time, Arlena, this is just the beginning for this group. I mean, Zion's 22. I mean, it's exciting to think about the prospects. Brandon Ingram, been in the league a long time, but he's only 25 years old, and he's a really gifted guy. So everything's falling into place. There is a plan. See, that's the key. There's a plan. In any organization, there's got to be a big plan for down the road purposes. And now the Pels have it with David Griffin, Trajan Langdon, Swin Cash, Bryson Graham, the top 4 in our basketball operations office. They've done a really good job mapping out a plan, not just for now, but for down the road. And I brought up Dyson Daniels. He's 19, and he is so far ahead of the curve. He is solid defensively already. He's already a great cover guy. And I didn't bring up Herb Jones. Herb is this quality, mature individual who was second team, all rookie, unbelievable defense. He gets it. His natural instincts like Dyson. So I could talk about the group because I'm around them all the time, but I won't bore you with that. But that's the key, is that the window, it's not about this year. It's about all that's developing for the long run, like Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford did when that window opened for Tim Duncan, because David Robinson was calling it a career, and then it opened for Duncan, Ginobili, Tony Parker, and the guys around them.
Well said. Okay, so you're with the Pelicans now, but how you talked about San Antonio right now. I want to bring that to here, and also the Lakers. Going from team to team, what have you, in those different eras, what can you diverse, I know that like the team obviously is different per each organization, but, is there something that you kind of picked out of each team that you experienced with when you were kind of growing in your broadcasting?
Yeah, the Spurs experience was a necessity for me because I learned so much basketball, and I learned it the right way. And I would jump on the bus and go to practice, go to shoot around, and learn. PJ Carlesimo was my partner, great coach and a great person. So PJ was my partner. We ate every meal together, and you learn and grow through the game, through really bright, articulate people. And then the best coach in NBA history, I got to spend time with, and he was unreal to me. So I'm deeply indebted to R.C. Buford, Greg Popovich, PJ Carlesimo, Sean Elliott, my next partner there. And we ate all our meals together because if you're on the same page, you're going to be together, and then you're on the same subject. We were talking hoops all the time. And it wasn't just about the Spurs, it was the league. Because on our nights off, Marlena, you got to remember, I watch everybody on League Pass. It's basically 7 months, and it's heaven on earth. I got the other 5 months to do whatever I want to do, because by May 1st, the networks take over anyway if you go deeper into the playoffs. So the Spurs experience was my major growth in learning the game, the NBA game, because I'd already done UCLA basketball in the 80s, and I did their radio play-by-play, which was incredible. I mean, Walt Hazzard, an unreal person and a great family person. His wife, Jaleesa, and the entire family loved them because they included me. So you grow by each experience. With the Lakers, my 8 years there, one thing really stands out: Kobe. And I became close with Kobe. He knew how much I cared, and that's all that mattered. And I got him. The third to last game of his NBA career was in New Orleans, and I told him, he knew how much I loved him. I told him I owed him for life, and he knew it. He deflected it, of course, because that was Kobe. You don't know me, you know what, and I got to know I owe you forever. And then the last 11 years here in New Orleans, it's been exciting because we've had some moments, but now it's really coming together. So it all pays off, and you grow from each experience, as you'll find out. You're just starting your career.
Right. And so Greg Popovich, you have to, okay, so everyone has their own funny experience with them, but you have to have like a story or two about Greg Popovich to share.
Mm. Well, first of all, the first word that ever comes to mind when I think of Greg Popovich is loyalty. One of the most loyal people I've ever been around. And he knew whether you were all in or all out. And so one morning we're at shoot around, and I'd go to jump on the bus. I want to go with the team. And one of the other broadcasters was with us. And he brought, in those days, 25 years ago, he brought USA Today, the newspaper. So while Pop is going through, this is what our game plan's going to be. There's scripts, and maybe these are the five we'll play off of. This is what they run regularly. So this other broadcaster he had the paper wide open, and it was Pop was just like he threw a basketball, hit the newspaper, and Pop looked at him. He goes, "You could do that in your bedroom." Really? It was classic, and it was a moment of we all laughed. It wasn't mean spirited. It was just like Pop was right. Stay in your room if you're going to read the newspaper. Because I went to shoot around this morning and I watched what we were planning on doing. It was great. So I have an idea how we're going to try to counter maybe our worst game of the season that was on Tuesday night. So, Pop, tough love. And it was love, believe me, with Greg Popovich. But boy, talk about sincere and honest. He's a quality person, just a great person. So you always want to be around those.
Right. And, going from a legend to another legend, rest in peace, Kobe, but you have to have a Kobe story that you need to share with us.
Well, he was passionate. Kobe was really passionate. One thing that stands out, my partner at the time was Michael Thompson, who's doing Laker radio still. And so we get over about 2.5, 3 hours before tip. And it was in Salt Lake City, where I'm at right now. And Kobe always got shots up, and they'd always have a couple of ball boys. And before anybody would come in, he didn't shoot, 5 minutes before game time or 90 minutes. He got up before the crowd was there, and he worked up a lather. And he said to he said to Michael Thompson, "I bet you 20, at half court, I can make it from here with my left hand." He swished it from half court. So he looks over at Michael, we're laughing, and he looks over to Michael and he goes, "Double or nothing?" Michael goes, "You're on." So he swishes another one from half court with his left hand. And then he comes running up. We're a couple of, rows up at the time. We're doing radio, so we're right behind TV. So second or third row. And he gets the 220s for Michael, and he runs over and gives 120 to one ball boy and the other 20 to the other ball boy. And he looks up with this big smile on his face at Michael, and then hustled back to the locker room. But Kobe had a big heart, big heart, passionate guy, just a good person.
That's awesome. So many people have Kobe stories, so it's just happy to hear another one coming from, someone who covered him. So that's amazing to hear. So throughout all these amazing players, like you saw legends, you saw Hall of Famers, hopefully future Hall of Famers with Zion Williamson, but who has been, if you had to pick like 1 to 3 players that have really caught your eye and kind of, made a wow factor on you?
Well, my first hero, and I'm having dinner with him next week because he just turned 90, Bob Pettit of the St. Louis Hawks. And I fell in love with the game watching Bob. And I was really young. My brother was 8 years older than me, and he'd take me down to Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, and I was really a puppy. I was playing a little pee-wee basketball, and I watched Bob and Zelmo Beatty, Bill Bridges, Paul Silas, Lenny Wilkins, Sweet Lou Hudson later after Bob retired, John Barnhill, Chico Vaughn, Jumpin' Joe Caldwell out of Arizona State. But my mouth was wide open when I watched Bob. And Bob was top 50s, top 75. One of the greatest players in NBA history. And Tommy Heinsohn told me stories about Bob subsequently when we'd have meals in the press room in Boston, how tough it was, working against Bob. And then Bill Russell quotes about Bob. When Bob wanted to rebound, try to take it away. Bob was that strong. So I celebrate Bob, and we get together hopefully every 3-4 weeks. And now he's 90, and we're meeting next week for dinner, taking him out for his 90th. And then there's so many incredible players. It's, Kobe stood out. Michael Jordan was amazing because Michael wanted it at the last. He always wanted it at the end. And it was like Kobe. To give you an idea about Kobe, my first year with the Lakers, went into Portland last day of the season. And now division means nothing to these guys. But last day of the season, we went into Portland a game behind, or even, but I think it was a game behind, and we held the tiebreaker if we won the game over Portland for the division title. So we're down 3, last seconds of the game, and Kobe is being guarded by Ruben Patterson, who had earlier that year or the year before called himself the Kobe Stopper. So that game, the last few seconds of the regular season, Kobe drills a 30-footer over Ruben Patterson. Boom. We're going to overtime. Now this is for the division, which meant a lot to us at the time. It means nothing now. It's crazy. So what does it boil down to in overtime? Same scenario. And Kobe hits the 3 over Ruben Patterson. Lakers win the last game of the regular season. It's the 2003-2004 season because it went to the finals against the Detroit Pistons before losing to Chauncey and Ben Wallace in that group. But that was the last game of the season. So I kind of compare, and Kobe loved Michael Jordan. So, and I love Kobe. And I didn't know Michael as well. I got to know Michael a little just from working. But that was good enough for me. So 2 guys that stand out, but I can go down a list of guys that just blew me away because of their skill set and how focused they were. They weren't showboats. They were just real. They played hard all the time. And now we got guys, it's unfortunate, take days off. Load management, the worst 2 words in the language for basketball. So I like guys that played hard all the time, like Michael, like Kobe.
Yeah, right. Everyone goes back to the old school way of, you see Charles Barkley, NBA, TNT, they all talk about their era. They're like, oh, we dominate of, the era that they're playing now of what the current NBA is. So your Pelicans are doing amazing right now. Like you said, you guys have a young core. You just talked about having a team dinner with them, recently after their loss. I believe they last played the Suns, correct?
Well, Tuesday was Utah. We're headed to Phoenix. Tonight is Utah again. Wrap up the season series. Not a good matchup for the Pels. Utah's got a ton of really good 3-point shooters. Had a great leader in Mike Conley at lead guard. And then head down to Phoenix and close out the season series, unfortunately, with the Suns, because that has been a really good rivalry now just over the last couple of years because of the competition last year, the playoffs last year, and the intensity that we saw over the first 3 games of this season series. And the Pels swept them last weekend at home on Friday and Sunday. So I know it's going to be a good battle on Saturday night in Phoenix.
Like I said, you guys are starting up. You talked about the Lakers era, how, you guys skyrocketed there, but it's rough being a Lakers fan right now, as we talked about a little earlier. But the Pelicans are on the rise. For anyone who doesn't watch the Pelicans, or maybe, doesn't follow them, which they should because they're doing amazing and they have some top talent, what do you want to tell those people, like, that your team is on the come up? Like, should they be worried about facing the Pelicans?
No, I mean, the level of talent in the NBA is incredible to begin with. First of all, it's going into the new week. 11 of the 15 teams in the Western Conference had 500 or better winning records. So it's crazy in the Western Conference right now, and it's really early in the season. But if you want to buy futures, and I mean futures for the next 3, 4, 5 years, Zion is 22. Herb Jones is 24. Brandon Ingram's 25. Trey Murphy is 22. Jose Alvarado's 24. Najee Marshall's 24. Dyson Daniels is 19. And Kyrie Lewis Jr. coming off an ACL, got some first run in a long time. Last game is only 21 lottery pick out of Alabama. So I always look at the teams that have the potential to ascend because of the young talent. Now, it takes experience. You have to have vets, and that's where Griff did a great job. So the acquisition of CJ McCollum changed everything for this franchise. And also the perception and image of a place you would want to be. See, Mrs. Benson, Gail Benson, who owns both the Saints and the Pelicans, really is great to the players on both franchises. It's a welcoming experience. They're not shorthanded on anything. If anything, Mrs. Benson, Griff, they go overboard. We have these team dinners on the road regularly. When we play the Lakers in LA, right? We were in Beverly Hills right after the game. Bosses took us straight to an incredible restaurant, team dinner, all the guys. And you got to remember the league, and you know it from LeBron and all the guys in LA. And CJ owns a 300-acre vineyard in the Willamette Valley for Pinot and other grapes. The league appreciates great grapes. So, and that's healthy, that the guys sit down and they have a glass of wine with dinner and talk and spend time together. And as heartbreaking as the loss to the Lakers was in overtime, they stayed around that restaurant and hung with each other. So that's why I bring up, if you're investing, you're buying futures, and I mentioned to you, Marlena, earlier, the window's just opening. This franchise has a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, there's a lot of, amazing people on your team. Who would you say is the funniest on the team if you had to pick on that roster?
Well, we got a lot of great personalities and guys with great hearts, like Billy Hernan Gomez. He may not get a lot of run. He was the MVP of Eurobasket, but we're deep at guard and we're deep at post. So Jonas is the traditional 5 post, and Larry Nance Jr. is the small ball 5. So you can't give everybody minutes. It's unfortunate. So Billy is hard to believe, that good a heart and supportive of his teammates. It's like Jose Alvarado. Everybody loves Jose universally. Devontae Graham, who I did mention, is only 27 and a nice shooter. Devontae's a great teammate. We have that. These guys care about each other. So I don't know if I'd say there's one guy that's funny. Herb and Trey, they have a bond. Jose, Najee, 2 undrafted guys have a bond together. Brandon's quiet, but a heart of gold. I don't know if we have a character like that. It's kind of, I'll give you this quote by Willie. And this was after the game. I'm trying to think, it was probably Sunday after the Phoenix game. Somebody brought up, one of the reporters brought up, you've used that. He said, Willie, you've used on this player, you've called him, his versatility, like a Swiss Army knife. So what would you call Najee? And he said, just a knife. And it was a great quote, because Najee plays hard downhill all the time. And he's got his teammates' backs, and they know it. So these guys really support each other. There's not a wild character or anything, but it's a bond that's developing.
Yeah, you could definitely see it through the TV for fans who, are not as accessible, to the players like you are. They have fun. You could see the joy of the game and how everyone gets along. So it's very noticeable, especially through the TV. So that's awesome. Do you know if a player on the team has a secret talent that you know of?
No, I don't think we have any vocalists, put it that way. Because we have an open practice for the fans before the start of the new season with rookies, and we make them sing. And it's really entertaining. So it's not nails against a chalkboard, but I don't think we have any great vocalists in there. They keep it in the shower, I hope. No secret or hidden talents that I know of.
What about yourself? Do you have a secret talent you want to share?
None. And some would say I'm void of that when it comes to the broadcast.
Besides having an amazing voice.
Yeah, no secret talents. I played as a kid. I grew up in a musical family. So I took piano lessons, played clarinet as a kid in elementary school, took piano lessons, moved on to saxophone, played in the band in high school. That was it. But I was always musically oriented and grew up with Motown. I always wanted to be David Ruffin of the Temptations and Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops. So that was what I always cared about. I've been a collector of music forever. And then it evolved to instrumentalist more than vocalist, although I do collect a lot of great, like Ella Fitzgerald's the greatest voice that ever lived. So whether it's on the men's side, Sinatra and Nat King Cole, Joe Williams, I could have a list, Johnny Hartman. On the women's side, Dinah Washington, Sarah Vaughan, besides Ella, Carmen McRae, Diana Krall, more contemporary. And I could go through other contemporary female vocalists, but I won't bore you. I've always, because I always appreciated gifted artists like that.
It's funny you mentioned, we're going to go into, music and everything in the jazz, but I always say to my family, if I lived in that era with Frank Sinatra, he would have been my husband, no doubt. He would have been my husband. Yeah.
And his birthday was just celebrated, It was the same day as Bob Pettit, the 12th of this past month. Yep. The 12th of December. It's Frank Sinatra, Bob Pettit, bunch of people. Really, really talented people.
Funny you mentioned all those instruments and you're like, that's it. That's all I've tried. That's like 6 instruments, Joel.
No.
Joel.
No. They're woodwinds. So it's simple. But I do collect a lot of the saxophone, the trumpet, most of it, I'd say piano dominates my collection, but I've been a collector since I was like late teens. So one day I'll give them my external hard drive and donate it to whether it's a station or a library, but I do have a lot of music.
So you talked about CJ and how, basically I feel like a lot of when you come into the league, when a new player comes into the league, I feel like they get introduced to wine and then they're hooked like that. Like everyone is so the nuance and the artistry of wine. Like how did you get involved in it? Who introduced you to wine? And do you have like top 3 recommendations? Because I would love recommendations because I love trying new wine.
Well, it doesn't have to be expensive to be good. Put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
It's right. It's the winemaker. It's like anything else. Is the man who did the most with the grapes, the agronomist. Did he make the most of what he had to work with? So, but I got into it a long time ago. And it evolved through partners, PJ Carlesimo and other guys a long time ago, and sharing. That's the greatest thing about music, and it applies to wine. You share, you turn people on to different things, and they expose you to things normally maybe you wouldn't be accustomed to seeing or trying. So that's the great thing about working with a group and not being a solitary person in an industry where you're by yourself, whatever it might be. So we're lucky. We get to work in a big group and a group of really gifted, talented people. And when it comes to the NBA, there's only 450. And that's in the world. 30% are internationals. That's how difficult it is to get into the league. The competition is that intense. So, yeah, and the wine, it just, everything changes. You'll grow through different grapes. It was always big Cabernets. Now it's more mellow stuff, blends. So the one constant in life is change. Leave it at that.
So do you have any top red wines that you drink currently, or do you kind of differentiate and kind of switch?
I put it this way. We call it PM and BM. Players money and broadcasters money.
Got it.
So we all know our limitations and what we can afford. And you research and do your homework like anything else on wine the same way. And then the grapes that you appreciate. So I've been into the Rhones lately, which is whether it's the Chateauneuf du Pape or the Northern Rhones, the Gros Hermitage and the Syrah. And like Bordeaux, but it's out of my league for the most part. And the Cabernets off the charts, but man, price ridiculous. That's not price sensitive, price ridiculous on some of those. So, but I do appreciate the talent of the winemaker, and you can see what they were trying to do usually.
Yeah, especially the story behind the wine. I think that's, all in all, whatever comes with the bottle, just the story, how it's prepared, the year, right. that all matters. We're going to wrap it up right now, but is there like a highlight right now? Like, because obviously you're still going strong. I don't want to, retire you yet, future Hall of Famer, but is there a highlight in your career that you kind of was like an aha moment or that you'll remember forever?
Oh, there's a lot. There's too many to list one. Just take one. Um, like 1964, I was really young, but I remember it like it's yesterday. And the Cardinals beat the Yankees in 7 games of the World Series. And my next door neighbor, who's still one of my best friends, we were listening to the Cardinal Clubhouse with Harry Carey, and it stands out. And it's not about just me calling a game, but also like the people you experienced that with, like in 2003 with the Spurs, and afterwards with their trainer, who's still a friend, Will Seventy, a good bud, and being with those people that you went through that long march with, that the first day of practice in training camp all the way till June. That means more than actually, one singular moment. You'll see later in life, it's who you experienced it with that stands out. So I've been very fortunate. I've been a part of 3 championships. And as I said before, Kobe, 2 of them. First one with the Spurs, it was memorable. It was incredible. Never forget it because of the people that I did it with.
Yeah. Like I said, you've lived a great career so far with tremendous teams, and like with that championship with the Lakers, I have no doubt the Pelicans are on that way. But
yeah, well, Marlena, let me just say one last thing. It would be a nice capper for me to have the city of New Orleans have a parade, have a championship parade, because the city has been so loyal to the franchise. The gym is packed now. It is a party atmosphere every night we're in that building, and they care so much. That would be the ultimate for me, to see the New Orleans Pelicans. Pels win a championship, and that would be as good as it gets for me.
Icing on the cake, right?
Yep.
Well, Joel, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom. Okay, you're not old. Don't ever say that again, please. But you're like fine wine, right? That's why you drink wine.
I hope it only gets better.
Yeah, but thank you so much for taking the time to be on this SBC podcast to tell, young up and coming broadcasters of, what to look forward to, and just give them a little behind the scenes, a little, pull the curtain back and see what it's like in your shoes. So really appreciate it, and we'll definitely talk soon, and good luck.
Thank you, Marlena. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Joel. Well, there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the SBC Audio Experience with Joel Meyers, the voice of the New Orleans Pelicans. Real quick, I want to thank Joel for joining me today. I learned so much from our conversation, but one of the things that especially stuck with me was when he advised to be yourself, don't be anyone else. For me, personally, as a female broadcaster, it reminds me to stay confident in who I am and make a name for myself in the business of basketball. An important tool Joel mentioned was to continue getting reps, and I look forward to doing just that with this podcast and future basketball events around me. That will do it for this week. I'm excited to learn and grow with you all through this audio experience. See you next time.